Hello and welcome. Welcome to everyone that loves everything cross-stitch. I am the Stitching Owl, here for Flosstube number 8 on November the 12th of 2023. I hope you will find something that you like in today's video. I'd like to thank everyone. I've got a little corner, a very tiny corner of the Flosstube world, but it's a corner that I truly love. I thank you for subscribing, for liking, and for the increase in comments. It has been so much fun for me to respond to each of you. And in some cases, I have been responding to people who are also Flosstubers, and I'm so excited that they have chosen to watch my video when I've been watching them for quite some time. Before we continue, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to the veterans and the veterans' families. Yesterday was a day where we celebrated and our gratefulness for those who have given their time and in many cases their life for the freedom that I experience every day and will continue to experience. The families give up so much time as their loved one serves away from home, and in some cases their loved one doesn't come home. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you. I do want to take a moment also to say welcome back to Lisa of Lost in Stitches. I really enjoy her Flosstubes, and we had a new recent upload that I would love for everyone to go take a peek at. She has so much wonderful, wonderful stitching to share, and a lovely personality that just bubbles over with joy. Okay, I'd also like to say thank you to, there's a lot of thanks today. Well, October and November are Thanksgiving months for those of us in North America. So I'd like to say thank you to the Flosstubers who have actually mentioned me on their channels. So firstly, the thanks go out to the Sunshine Stitchers, Shelia, EJ, and Deb, who have mentioned me in a couple of their videos. I'm tickled pink that you like the ornaments that you received at the retreat that we were at together, and it was so wonderful to be able to share a table with you. It is on my bucket list to meet EJ. She, of course, was busy teaching at the time that you would have had to be flying into our retreat. I would like to say thank you to Roberta and Lynnie of the Sable Stitchers, who enjoyed their Send a Smile recently, and also the ornaments that came with that. I now have a thank you to somebody that you may not know. Her name is Carmen, and her Flosstube, it's Flosstube number 1. I don't know how many she's planning to do, and I don't think she knows either. It is cardamom pins, CARDAMENPINS, and I will pop it up here for you to read. So she was a young lady who did attend the second week of Jacob Palooza and was so enthused that she gave the most complete recap of our weekend possible. I felt like I was reliving every joyful moment as she described what was going on. And I have to say, it is absolutely delightful that someone young is so enthusiastic about learning about the history and the stitching that Jacob had to share with us. So I do encourage you to have a peek at her video, but when you do this, have your favorite drink and a nice stitchy project handy. I think we have a couple hours there to watch. but her enthusiasm will make you smile. This week, I actually don't have a Send a Smile. I am waiting for an address, so I feel it's only appropriate for me to wait to let you know who the recipient is until I know for sure that they are wanting to send me their address. I always just leave it open to each person as I reach out to them. If they're comfortable sharing their address with me, I would like to send them a smile. And on occasion, after a couple of weeks wait, I determined that possibly they are not really wanting to share. So that's why I don't want to share a recipient's name until I know for sure. Okay. I am ready to go with my fully finished. So, I know that all of you are watching Crisscross Stitch, and I know that every one of us absolutely adores his stitching is wonderful, but just his ability to story tell and feel like he's right in the room with you during each of his floss tubes is a special gift that is singularly his. And recently we have discovered that he's been enamored with the idea of having a royal flush when it comes to what he's presenting. Well, Chris, or maybe I should call you Mr. Cross Stitch, not sure which. I don't know a lot about poker because I have not played poker. But when I was younger, I played a dice game called Yahtzee. Now, I don't know if any of you are old enough to actually have any memory of that, but it was a game with 5 dice, and you were trying to actually get things like 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, a straight. It really did go along with the terms that are poker. So this is where I know my poker terms from, a childhood game. I think, Chris, that I have a full house. What we learned was that a full house is a group of 3 plus a group of 2. So, now I'm going to have to stand up to show you this one. I have a full house. These are the 3 ornaments that I was demonstrating last week, or 2 weeks ago now, on how I do round ornaments. And these 2 are new ornaments that I have made that I'm going to chat with you about later as to how I get my effective points. Now, I'm just going to run a little bit closer. So yes, you'll notice that these 2 are exactly the same pattern, but I've used a different colorway. This is the called for colors, and this is the Stitching Owl's own version of the colors. My daughter loves pink and aqua, so I felt that it was appropriate for me to try it in her colors. Now, the pumpkins are the Jack-o'-lantern Garland by Maddie Miller. Really, they were very quick for me to finish after the last floss tube because I had done an awful lot of the work while I was actually videoing you. The Poinsettia Fairy is by Kathleen Berlew. I apologize to Kathleen if I said your name wrong. It is on page 43 of the Just Cross Stitch Christmas Ornaments 2023 magazine. Now, I told you last week that my jack-o'-lantern was stitched in a black sulky thread, 12 weight, 1 thread over 2 on a 32 tangerine Lugana fabric. My glasses are slipping. There we go. My new Poinsettia Fairies are actually on a Roxy Floss Co. 32 count dirty porcelain. And I did 1 strand over 2 with DMC. And as said, The red and green example were the called for colors, while the pink and aqua were what I pulled because they just made me feel close to my daughter as I was stitching them. And a little news flash, lately on Mondays my daughter has called and asked to come over to stitch with me for a couple of hours. My heart is so happy about that. She is stitching a kitten picture that is something I purchased off Etsy from Cute Patterns by Maria. So I think that my full house looked like a full house. Do you agree? Let me know in your comments below, because I think I might have one more poker hand before we're finished this video. Now, fully finishes. Continue with, here is one that I was showing you last time, partially finished as well. This is called The Unwelcome Sign by Frony Ritter. Again, this was using sulky thread and was 1 thread over 2 on Tangerine Lugana. I do have a beaded hanger and a basic black, but isn't that a nice black? It's paisley, but it's tone on tone. It just suits the dark October. And I know we're really past it, but I wanted to finish, show me my fullish finishes. Let me try that one again. I can talk. I wanted to show you the fully finished items I did on the 30th and 31st of October, and they will be out to celebrate, of course, next year. So there's that one. Also fully finished is my Santa Paws ornament that was a mill hill. Last week I had the cross stitch done, and this week I also have the beading done. So you can see the word joy, a little heart, and this one came with this heart treasure right there. Now this was a very quick stitch, and it certainly is one that I think that I could do again and again, just using my own source of beads. And because under the treasure we actually have a heart, you don't have to have that treasure in order to have an effective ornament. Now, Mill Hill always provides us with a lot of beads, so I had enough to make the hanger. This was actually one that they had thought would be a magnet, so they were expecting us to put a magnet on the back and just pop it onto your fridge or filing cabinet, but I don't tend to do that. I find I knock them off, whereas we're really careful with Christmas trees. I know a lot of people with pets, so I think that that's slightly generic, so it could go to somebody who owns a cat or a dog. Now, another fully finish this time. Took quite a few hours yesterday. Yesterday was my finishing day. What I've decided is that really I am most comfortable recording on Sundays. So instead of doing this on the 1st and the 15th, I'm just going to do it make a video every other Sunday. And that will mean that every other Saturday will be a finishing day. So you all had a journey with me originally when I was showing you a Christmas stocking that had a flamingo on it. It took me between 5 and 6 months to complete this. And it is a Neni Design Crafts pattern, and they are on Etsy, and they have a number of different patterns that are different animals. You can get them either singly or in groups of 4. And right now, they have a 30% off. So it's a great time to take a peek at their patterns to see if you like them. Okay, so here we are with my Christmas stocking. Now, I ended up This really doesn't have the traditional red or dark green backing. I picked a backing that fit the color on the front, and inside little snowflakes and stars on something that's quite neutral, so that it was more like this. So I have pressed and best pressed this. It was safe, in my opinion, to best press this because DMC is fairly trustworthy in their color fastness. I know that another floss tuber that I was watching was talking about using best press on her cross stitch finishes so that when she showed them on Flosstube they seemed really crisp. And I said, so do you do that even when it's over dyes, either on the original fabric you're stitching on or on the flosses? And she came back with, that is an excellent question. Right at the moment, I'm not using any of those. I know that, I would say in the summer maybe, Curious Crafters had a Flosstube extra where they actually put wet over-dyed floss on Kleenex and let it dry, and then they moved it to see whether or not there was leaching of color, and indeed there was, which means that if we are rather delighted in soaking our finished products, we could be at risk for having some of our deeper colors of red, blue, and green. They could actually end up leaching out onto our back fabric and having an effect that we are not expecting. But on this one, this is full coverage, and I will tell you it's definitely full coverage. All of the stockings in this series are. Is there anything I would change? There is one thing. When this was completed, there was a row of black all the way around. Because of that, and you can see that the black is right here at the top as well, I felt obligated to including this black piping so that when I sewed it, that black made sense to the stocking. I think that with my next pattern, because I got a group of 4 of these and I would love to do the seal next, the baby seal is just so adorable. I don't think I'm going to put that color around. I will probably use a neutral or just extend the actual pattern one more box so that I know that I can sew on top of the last X of each line as I make my pattern. But this is going to be a send a smile that I will alert you when it has been received at a later date. I'm just checking. I thought I heard the tapping of little toes, which might mean my pup has come close, but I have a feeling it's going to be like last time and we won't get to see her. Okay, so those were my fully finished, I'm fully finished my fully finishes. So I'm really quite excited about how many of those I was able to complete in the 2 weeks that we have here. Now let's go to finishes. And I have one that technically speaking is a start and a finish. I finished the fox the last time we were together, and what I had said is that I was going to alternate between tiny towns and animals from the Country Cottage Sampling series. So I got out the Christmas Tiny Town and I finished it. Now this is sulky thread again, and if I just move it in, you can see the wonderful coverage. So this is 32 count Stormy Night Lugana, 1 12-weight strand of sulky over 2 excellent coverage. Now I'm thinking of taking a few of these and making ornaments out of individual elements here. I must admit that I think when I do this again, here I will have the line, but I think I'm going to use beads so that they look like Christmas lights rather than the pennants that seem to be here. My goal here is not a drum this time. I want to experiment with something new for a gift that I'm going to be having my youngest give away in December. I'm hesitant to tell you what it is in case it doesn't work out, so more to come. Okay, let's see if this works. I'd like to introduce you to Lola. Oh, yeah, hi. This is my stitching partner. She likes it when I sit really close in the living room, and is particularly happy if if I will just stitch for a couple of hours without moving. And you know what? I'm happy to do that. So for those of you who are curious, she is a Lhasa Apso. And that means that if we didn't have her haircut, her hair would be all the way to the ground and you wouldn't be able to see her eyes or her paws as she walked. But she's not a show dog. She is a lovely little pet, and she's actually 14 years old. We want to get many more years to come, and she's very loving. Okay, let's see if you'll just go on. There we go. Let's see if she'll just watch me for the rest of this video. I'm not sure if I'll get that lucky or not. Okay, so we've done the finish, which means that we are up to whips. So this pattern is called Under the Stars. It's by Modern Folk Embroidery, which of course is Jacob's pattern. And I started this the night before Jacob Palooza so that I could get it going. Now, one of the things that I told you recently was that I know my piece of material is not quite big enough and I'm going to have to figure out how to make it fit. Well, the last time I watched Evertote, Caroline, she admitted that one of the stitchers had played with this and made it into a square, and that Jacob liked it so much that he charted it and has released it. So yes, I'm going to be looking at that to see whether I will end up just doing the square version and then it would fit. Because I have tested, and indeed I have the width, I just don't have the length. Now if I move in, you can see that I almost have this set of flowers over here done. This is a 32 count. It's Lugana again, it's an even weave. And it is called, Blue Moon. I have my notes and I couldn't remember what it was called. So this is Blue Moon, and it was, we think, by a company called Lost Notes. I love the variegation in it, but this was the only piece of material that they had of this, and I knew that if I wanted this sulky, it's a golden variegated weight thread, that I had to make it fit on this piece of material. So this is my 2 threads a day, and in my own way, I'm going to say there are birds on here. So Shiloh, the Cross Stitch MD, she is doing Octobered, Novembered, Decembered. She's celebrating everything birds, and I will loosely say these have birds, so I am joining you in your fun, Shiloh. I do want to do some that are more colorful birds. I just need more hours in the day, but we'll see if I can get one of those in. So I'm really, really pleased. I have to say that I truly enjoy being able to do Jacob's pieces. I think that the more you do them, the more you enjoy them and want to do more of them again. He has released his 2024 sew along, and it is exquisite. And of course, it comes with multiple options for colors. And if you don't want to do one that he has offered, you can do your own. He's good with it all. So there is my modern folk embroidery whip. I am also taking part in a sew along. This is Jardin Prive aux Filles de Nichoirs. Colette, the Highway Stitcher, and I believe Brenda, the Handwork Maniac, have a sew along each year, going from retreat to retreat in October. And this is this year's pattern. So as people are doing this, some people are starting on the October birdhouse, and some people are just starting at the left, which would be the January birdhouse. Now, in true Karen fashion, I'm making my birdhouses into ornaments. Okay, so if I put my hand here, you will see that this is a 28 count even weave by Roxy Floss Co. And hang on, it is called Panettone. I've heard Caroline talk about Panettone. I have to say, if you're going to do 1/1, I feel that the fabric itself has to have this perfect balance of being sturdy enough that your thread is not always sliding under the weave or weft, but soft enough that you can actually handle it. This one is perfect. So I'm going to be doing each of the birdhouses separately, and then at the end I will be cutting them apart and making ornaments out of them. So the ornaments will not be an as I go. It will be sometime next year. I will just cut off the bottom half if I get 5 or 6 across and make those as I'm working on the next 6. So these are called for DMC with 1/1 on the 28 count. I will admit that when it comes to this back stitching, I was playing around with the idea of just using sewing thread that was 50 weight of Aurifil. But when I did it, it did not show up at all. So I ended up using one strand of the DMC. When I go in, I guess this isn't quite finished. There is some wood grain to go on here. That I will use actual just sewing thread of Aurifil. So I'm really pleased that I've got the October birdhouse done and can start the November birdhouse. I was doing this starting from the middle of the month when they had finished their retreat. I didn't start it before that they would start this. So I don't know if I'll get November done before the end of November, but I'm gonna try, we'll see. Okay. Now, as you know, I am very, very excited about my big awesome project, my big art project, my stained glass owl. Now, this is a Sharova Creations design, and I might have made a reference last week about the fact that I hope to get to having my first stitch in the owl. How silly was I? There is more stained glass to go before I ever get a stitch in that owl. But I will say I made very good progress this week. Last time, there was no blue, dark blue. There we go. So in here, all of this was accomplished this week. And I just find it so vibrant. So I am over halfway down. I'm almost at a fully, like a big page finish in this area here, but I need to fill in a little bit here. So maybe next time I'll be able to say, hooray, I've got one of the big pages finished. I continue to be very thankful to Lauren, the New Hampshire stitcher, for starting this SAL. I used to do full coverage, and in true Stitching Owl style, even 25 and 30 years ago, I gave every one of them away. So I don't actually have any of them. I had forgotten how much fun these were to do. So I have a feeling I will always have a full coverage on the go now that I have been reminded about the fun. I actually am already at 19,000 stitches. That's amazing to me. I am not quite at my 2-month anniversary of starting this. I started this on September 16th. So on November 16th, I will take a picture and put it on Instagram. I'm the Stitching Owl over there, and that will be what will be the exact 2-month anniversary of my big, awesome project. But again, thank you, Lauren. So many of us are having so much fun. Now, am I finished with my whips? Well, I actually had a start. I have never done a Plum Street before, and yet I do have a number of Plum Street patterns, and I just couldn't help myself. I am no longer a monogamous stitcher. I don't know where I come from because I like finishing things, but now I have a whole bunch of things on the wall. So I started, let's see if I can get this, there we are, Polar Pack. So it is one that I actually think I'm going to make into a tiny pillow. While it is somewhat Christmassy, it is just winter as well, which is wonderful. And on this one, I am doing 20 count Aida cloth. It is cornflower fiber on a whim. So this is going to turn out fairly small. Now, I don't have a head on my bear yet. But this solid bit is all finished, and now it just gets to smaller and smaller bears. So I might be able to actually have the stitching done for our next video. I am truly enjoying this, and I think it's going to be adorable finished. I have a number in that series, and I'm looking forward to doing them all. Now, I just want to take a moment here to discuss pronunciation. I am a musician, and as a musician, I have been aware since I was, I'd say 12 years old in my first history of music class, that there is a great opera called Aida. It's by Giuseppe Verdi, and it is an amazing thing to see. And if they use live animals, oh my. I'm not going to take a moment in time right here to actually explain the story, but it is a pageant for sure. When I listen to Chris Cross, I hear him call this Aida cloth, because that is how he learned it. And I look at it and sometimes I think, yes, that's the true way of saying this. but all my LNSs call it Aida cloth. So, Chris, I'm sorry. I just keep slipping into the Aida cloth, even though Aida would be the proper pronunciation. Let me see. I think I may have just gone through all of my whips. Okay, cool. So just a couple things I will list below. The sals that are available for each of these things. The birdhouse sal actually has 3 different names, and so you can put all 3 down. And the way Instagram is now, perhaps if you also tag Colette, that would allow her to be sure to see what you're doing. I'm really pleased with how we've been chattering back and forth about our efforts. She's also doing hers tiny on 25 count. I'm also delighted that I'm now at my 3-month mark. I've passed it, so hopefully the links below will be actual live links instead of just something that you have to copy. Okay, so now we are doing my talk about my ornaments. Okay, so I'm just going to take this off and drop it promptly, aren't I? I'm gonna drop them both. Okay, excuse me for a moment. Okay, so here we are. So last time we did the circular ornaments, and this time I'm going to talk to you about having a rectangle or a square with defined points. So in here, if you were just looking at this, you wouldn't actually look at her and say she's a square. But it turned out that by the time I went from this side, top to bottom, she is actually on a square ornament. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so let's go through the steps, and this time you will see still pictures up here as I chat so that you can see each of the steps that I've taken to make this ornament. So I don't actually have ornaments in different levels of completion to show you this week. So the first step, of course, is stitch your pattern. That has to be where we start. And the second thing has to be trim around your pattern once it is finished. Now, you need to decide how much space you want. You can see right here, I've got a little less than 1/4 of an inch from the edge of each of these. So that happened to be my choice on this. You might want more negative space, and I have seen people make it even snugger and have the edges right to this where the edge of the ornament is. So you need to decide what that is and then add between 1/4 and 1/2 an inch. I would actually recommend doing 1/2 inch beyond what your plan is, because that just gives you a little bit of breathing space in the finishing. Now, you need to have actually made that plan when you did your stitching as well, because occasionally you discover that you just used a little end of material and you don't actually have that much. So that might cause you to make a smaller ornament. But that is what I do. I'm just going to let my pup off of the chair. She wasn't as interested in embroidery and cross-stitching as you are. Okay, so then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to trim each corner. So this is just a blank piece of 25 count pewter, and you can see I took the corner off. Now when you take the corner off, it is possible for you to whoops and take it too much. You need to have at least 1/4 of an inch between the point of your form that I use comic book board and this edge. If you take it down further, you could have issues trying to complete your ornament. Although there is another way, which I can explain another day, if you find that you have material far too small and you can't wrap it, there's always a way to still use your stitch. Do not fear. So I trim this off and then I zigzag. This is actually serged. So you can zigzag, serge, or you can use fray check to help to stop our woven fabrics from fraying as we work with them. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret. My mother also has, in a pinch, used clear nail polish, and it does work. So we have cut this, we've zigzagged around the whole thing, and then I suggest a good iron. When you're ironing your pieces, what I typically do is I iron the back side, not the front side. And I have on my ironing board a very plush cover that has multiple layers, so that if I have beads, the beads go into the plush. If you don't have a thick cover, like I was just suggesting, my suggestion is to grab a towel, and one that is fairly cushy, maybe even fold it over so that it's cushy, so that when you're ironing, you're not going to actually start splitting your beads at all. So that's one thing there. So then I cut my comic board. And remember, last time I was explaining, I just get these. You can get them, I think, in groups of 25, 50, or 100 off of Amazon. And they are actually quite economical. You're going to get a lot of ornaments. And my understanding is that they are acid-free, so it's a safe backing. I do know that certainly cardboard can be used in a pinch, but cardboard could break down over time, and if it's got any markings on it, you don't want that marking to come onto your ornament. So you're going to cut the comic book board to the desired size, and I discussed about that. Now, one of the things that I do is, as much as possible, I do not use scissors when I'm cutting my comic book board. I use X-Acto knives, or I use a rotary blade that I have because I'm a quilter. In this way, I don't have jagged points that this motion with the scissors can cause. So try for as smooth as possible on the edge. Now, you're going to cut 3 of the same size. When I use comic book board, a single, this is stiff, but I find that when I'm pulling the worked piece around it, I want it to be a little bit firmer, so I use double-sided tape. I use Scotch Brand, but anything that is convenient to you would work, and I stick them together. Now, one option is actually to stick your 2 boards together and then to use your X-Acto knife, so that the precision in the layering is right there from the beginning. If you happen to use your X-Acto knife going through the part that has the tape on it, you can use just a little bit of rubbing alcohol to take the sticky off that edge, but be careful so that you don't cut yourself in the process of trying to clean the X-Acto knife. Okay, so then we have our talk about batting. Now, I have a lot of batting left over from my quilting endeavors, because when you're doing the actual quilting, you make the batting bigger, you quilt it all up, and then you trim off the edges so that it's a precise edge. I always keep my edges and then use them in my ornaments. So I like to have a double layer of batting on my ornaments. You might choose to have a single layer. Some people don't want any batting at all, and other people want extra poof. How much poof you have is truly your own choice. If you want more poof, please make your original cut around your piece bigger, because that poofing up actually takes a couple of threads, so that you just need a bigger original piece of material. Now for my backing, I don't put any batting on it. I put my backing straight on this. So you can see here, this has poof, this does not. When I do my layering, I make my second piece of batting fractionally smaller, and it is just a fraction, than the first one. What I'm trying to do is to avoid having multiple layers right at the edge when I am trying to sew these shut. I find that I want that not to be too bulky there. So if I take off just that hint, it allows me to have the poof I want, but not the difficulties in the final process of sewing things together. As mentioned last time, what I do is I put the fractionally smaller one on the bottom right next to the comic book board, and then the bigger one on top, so that there is not a line around the edge, so that the ornament, when it's pulled against it, you can see where that line is. Now I've had somebody ask me about using sticky board. Sticky board is something that a lot of people use for making their ornaments. The reason I don't find it helpful is I'm actually just sticking the batting to it. I'm not actually sticking my ornament to it, so I still have the same challenges. So my choice is not to spend more money on sticky board to still have the same challenges of slipperiness that I would have here. And okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to clover clip the piece to the comic book board. These are clover clips. You can get them in different sizes. I buy mine at my local quilt store, which happens to also sell my needlework stuff. I'm so lucky. I'm sure you can get them at Amazon or any like fabric store as well. I find that these are very helpful because they pinch on. I don't use pins as much, because when you do this, you end up shifting your material ever so slightly. Now, there are times that I use pins when my piece is bigger than an ornament. If I was doing something that is very large, well, very large, 5 by 7 or more. 5 by 7 is not very large, is it? One of the things I would do is I would actually pin all the way around, and I would put the pin between the two layers of the comic book board so that I could truly center it. In those cases, I would also use a running stitch. That when I did a running stitch, I would find a spot that was 3 or 4 pieces of thread away from my farthest X, and I would do that on all sides, because that would give me my boundaries. This is really helpful when you've got a lot of negative space and you can't quite figure out how to center your work. If you put that running stitch in, and you can use any color of thread, it can be grandma's thread that is so old that you're hesitant to use it in clothing because you're not sure how much it's going to last, or it could be something that was really cheap and an odd color. These things are great because you're going to pull it out. But that's a great way to actually be able to center your work very clearly. And using the pinning around the edges when you've got a bigger work allows you the ability to really work with it. And because we are used to counting threads, that's what counted cross stitch is all about. We can actually put the pins in between the same two threads all the way along and make sure that we truly have it straight. It takes time, but nothing about cross stitch is fast. That's part of its beauty. We have to slow down to do it. Okay. After you've got it clipped on the sides, so when you clip it on the sides, you're literally just clipping it like this, and you've got it there. And I think I'm going to be putting some more slideshow in here. And you lace. So it doesn't matter whether you lace the lengthwise or the crosswise first. You do your lacing. I happen to use crochet cotton or upholstery thread. I find them to be quite strong so that I can really pull tight. Now, I think I need to back up. Before I lace, we need to talk about these corners because that's what this is all about. Okay. So you see that this is what your corner is going to look like. I fold it this way over that, and then I have to try and do this backwards. I fold this end in and I fold this end in. And then I put my clip on that. So you actually end up covering the point, but not having a lot of bulk at the very point. That's one of the ways I get my points to be pointy, is not to have bulk. So that's what it looks like. And then I literally do this. Now, if the piece is big, I might have to have another clover clip over here. Frequently on some of my smaller ornaments, I just have to put it on the corners. So, it is important, usually, the smaller the piece, the more important it is to make sure you have taken care of these corners and work those in. What I find is if you do your lacing for all the sides and you've just got this popped up, it is very hard to get that to lie correctly when you've only got a couple of millimeters, a quarter of an inch, depending on what country you're in, to work with. So I make sure that I've got that special fold over the corner, and that is the one element that's a little bit different than our curious crafters, is how I fold over the corner. After I've done the lacing, I get a matching thread, matching to this. And what I do is I whip stitch up this, and every time I pull it closer, it becomes closer and closer. Until this becomes a point. You can see that I believe I've got pictures to show you that before I've sewn it up, there is a bluntness or a rounding of the point, but when I sew right to the corner, there is a true point in place. Now, because we sew right to the corner, occasionally a little bit of that thread might show in the finished product. We won't see it if it's the right color. But here, you're not going to use Grandma's lime green thread because it actually matters here. We only use that odd color when we're going to pull it out. Now we're going to make sure that we've put on the hanger. You can see I always use beading hangers. So we'll look at this picture again. I have a loop start. So I've put through my thread and I end up with it doubled, and I double knotted at the end. Using a quilter's knot is awesome. And then I feed it through, not right at the corner, but close to the corner of one side, pull it up, I do my beading, and then again, because we are cross stitchers, I can actually look at this and go, oh, that is 5 threads in on this side, so I'm going to make it 5 threads in on this side when I finish it off and put it down and hide it. So the ends of this are always on the inside. Now you've got your front done. You're going to do your back in the same way, just without the batting. You're going to lace it. I will say that there are times when you're using pure cotton that for some reason the corners seem to be fine and don't need that extra step of adding the extra sewing that I do all the way to the point. Other times, I think it depends on the thickness of the material that you've got on the back. This was actually quite a thin Christmas cotton from my mother's leftovers. And so I found that it was easy enough to just, on the back side, the points just seemed to work this time. If I can save my time, that is absolutely great. And then on this one, you can see that I blanket stitched around the edge. I always start at the bottom and I come up and around. And this is where I said last time that when you're trying to do this, ideally you do it with one thread, because it's just nasty to have to bury a thread and get it started and make it look good. The trick there is when you make your double thread of pearl cotton, because this is a 5-weight pearl cotton, I wrap it around the circumference of whatever I'm doing 2 times and I add 1 inch. And then I know for sure that I won't run out of thread while I'm doing the blanket stitch. I'd rather have a little extra left over at the end than to be 2 inches short. It is really inconvenient to try to figure out how to fit in just a couple more inches. So that was the blanket stitch. This one is not blanket stitched. Let's go closer. I have beaded the edges. Now, I admit I do love to bead. If you are in a hurry to get gifts done, do not choose this. It took me 2 hours to bead each of these ornaments. And actually, it might have even been a little longer for the first one as I was getting my stitch settled. So I just used 50-weight Orfill floss, Orfill cotton thread. I always use cotton, I don't use polyester. And I literally took very tiny, tiny stitches. And then in the picture, you're going to see that I did have markings on my finger so that I could keep these fairly even in their spacing as I was going along. I really think this finish is adorable. I will use it again, but I can't do it in a hurry. So there's my tricks for doing the ornaments. Now let's see what I forgot to tell you earlier. I think there was a couple of things. First of all, we have talked in the past about Penny's daughter Cher's, Michelle having her 50th birthday and trying to do 50 starts from her birthday this year to the birthday next year. Now, I did not start this in September. I started it closer to the end of October. So that's where I'm starting from. And at this point, I've got 4 starts. My Jardin Prive au Fil du Nichoirs, Plum Street Polar Pack, Heart and Hand Christmas Tree Tiny Town, and my Poinsettia Fairy by Kathleen Berlew. So I've got 4 starts on my list. I will continue to add to that list. And the other thing that I forgot to put in earlier was something I alluded to with my crisscross poker. I said I thought I had more than one hand. Well, I showed you my full house. Now, I don't know if I've got a royal flush, but I'm going to argue that I do. So I had a fully finish in my Flamingo stocking. I had a finish in my Christmas Tiny Town. I had a whip in my stained glass owl. I had a start in my Polar Pack. And we were chatting about what the 5th thing could be. Well, the 5th thing could be many things. So I'm going to say my 5th thing is I have on order 1 dozen Quakers. It's a Rosewood Manor, and it's a pattern that I want to do with the Sunshine Stitchers over the 13 months starting on December 1st. We'll see when it arrives in the mail. I have to admit, I did order it from the original company, and when I first put it through, I stopped and went, oh, I'm buying a $22 pattern and having to pay over $30 in postage. So I actually stepped back and I looked all over to see whether there was another way. I couldn't find it. So I did what all good cross stitchers do. I went on and I bought another pattern so that it wasn't traveling alone, because it wasn't added postage if I had 2 patterns instead of 1. So, Chris, I think I had 2 poker hands, and I didn't use anything from my full house to make my royal flush. What do you think? So, I hope you've enjoyed your time with me. I know I've enjoyed my time with you. We all love to make things, so I hope that you can make yourself happy.